and now that's joined with anti-vaxxers and conspiracy theorists, which of course the two issues are joined really at this point in history, and these are the ways of dismissing people. When the Great Barrington, I live in Great Barrington, by the way, and just behind, a mile or two behind where we live is the institute where the Great Barrington Declaration was started. And it caused an absolute outrage among the citizens of this town of Great Barrington, which are overwhelmingly, probably 95% are liberal Democrats, who were vehemently opposed to what these three doctors were saying in the Declaration. And I signed on to that declaration right away, and I felt it was coming from a rather conservative position. It's not some radical statement, and I didn't totally agree with everything that it said, but it seemed like a reasonable approach at the time to a way to proceed. But people here were just outraged because it was just a knee-jerk reaction, because the issue of COVID has been joined to other issues, exactly, which are, you mentioned, you're on the left. Well, surely I am too. But after a while, you notice that a lot of people on the left and people who are called liberal are opposed. They're completely in goose step with Fauci, and they're against the Great Barrington Declaration, and they're for the jabs, and they're for the lockdowns, and they're for the masks, and nothing. It doesn't really matter. And across the political board now, there are so many people on the left who are following this and are with Fauci all the way. That's very, very, very disappointing and disheartening for sure.
Yeah, it's extremely disappointing. And of course, that was my point. And in my article, and it's my point on social media all the time. Yeah. This is not an issue. The left is going to decimate itself. It is decimating itself with this.
Yeah.
There's no reason for this. These questions are not questions that you can, and this goes to the vaccine, what I call vaccine exceptionalism and vaccine credulity. It's been a sign, I know this because I had it, of rationality and liberal, as opposed to being superstitious and anti-science, that any question of a vaccine, any questioning of vaccine is anti-science, is moronic, is anti-vax. These words, anti-vax and conspiracy theorists, are terrible words. Anybody who uses them unironically or without question is revealing themselves to be faked out, to have been ideologized to such an extent that it's hard to get out of it, and hard to how bad it is, because they're really saying, if you say someone's a conspiracy theorist, that means you have to stop thinking. That means you have to shut them up and stop thinking. Someone's an anti-vaxxer. You don't have to think beyond that point. Nobody should think. You're forbidden from thinking beyond that point. So these are really terrible, terrible terms and they're signs of having been inculcated with an ideological reflex that is very dangerous. And because in this case, it's extremely dangerous to society. It's destroying science. You can't have a scientific discussion. Science, as you say, the Great Barrington Declaration isn't the word of God either. Let's look at it and talk about it. The scientists like Robert Malone and Jay Bhattacharya and Gupta in Oxford and Martin Kulldorff, they're scientists like everybody else. They're not the word of God either, but they're real scientists. They know what they're talking about, and we deserve to have a discussion of this. How has the Fauci-Gates paradigm worked out? It's worked out terribly, and nobody can deny that. So what you do is you shut down the discussion of everything else and think that you, as a leftist, you think this is a good thing. You go and you say, we're going to fire workers, nurses, hospital aides who've worked for 2 years with COVID. Nobody said during, oh, you're giving people COVID. Worked for 2 years for a vaccine because they won't take a experimental gene therapy drug that has against a disease that has a less than 1% hospitalization rate and a less than 0.4% infection fatality rate and has unknown dangerous long-term side effects. You're going to throw them out of their jobs. What are the side effects of someone losing their job, their health insurance? What's the health side effects of that? For them, their families, their children. You're going to do that. You're going to cheer on mandates that throw people out of their jobs without even conditioning your support of that mandate on the government compensating the people they're trying to force to take the drug for any harms that drug may cause. You can be a leftist and say, I think vaccine mandates are necessary. That's either right or wrong. You're either right or wrong on the science about that. And I think you'd be wrong. But I don't see how as a leftist you can say, yeah, they're necessary. We have to throw people out of work who won't take the drug, but I'm not going to ask the government. I'll support that without demanding that the government compensate people who are harmed by the drug they forced them to take. That's crazy. And what's going to happen? And this is an intended effect. At least it's a beneficial effect from their point of view. These policies, no matter how crazy they may, it's like the foreign policy, like Middle East. Oh, this is all nuts. Why are these senseless wars? No, there was a logic to those wars. The logic to those wars was to destroy those countries and weaken them. And there's a logic to this. The logic to this was to get mandatory vaccination, which they've gotten, and you're going to have to fight against it and stop it now. And the logic to it was to make it impossible to build a left movement again. How are you going to build a left movement when you're going to go workers who have been fired from their jobs en masse, and you say, yeah, I support you being fired from your job. and what on what grounds? They're going to say, I'm healthy. The nurses who were fired because they weren't vaccinated are being replaced by people who have positive COVID tests because they're vaccinated. You're supporting this. So what you've done, you are going to see a huge surge for the Republicans in 2022 and 2024. And one of the big reasons is because of these mandates and lockdowns and mandates and socially exiling people, and there are leftists in the world. This is not a right-wing movement. The Republicans have grabbed it and will grab it and will make hay of it. And it's if they're right about this, they're right about this. Like they were right about Russiagate, and they're going to use it politically to their benefit. But Jeremy Corbyn, the Black Lives Matter movement, Black Caucus of the Green Party, people like us, we're leftists. I'm not giving up my leftism, but I'm not going along with firing millions of workers because they won't take a drug that I won't take because I know something, not because I'm selfish, but because I know something about this drug and I don't want a society. This is the other thing. Are you selfish? Do you want a society in which everybody, not just me because I'm unvaccinated, everybody has to carry around their papers in order to show they're eligible to go to a restaurant or a movie or to have a job? And is that the society you want? That's not a society we want. That's not a selfish or unselfish thing. That's about what kind of society do you want? And we don't want that society any more than we want a society that would allow stop and frisk for everybody. Stop and frisk. Hey, gun violence was a public health issue, right? So why can't we have stop and frisk for everybody? Because that'll maybe save some lives from gun violence. But you're changing the society. You're making a society in which the cops have the right to come in and raid restaurants and to go into political demonstrations and demand papers and measure with measuring sticks how far apart from what you are. This is a hill that leftists are going to die on, because you will die on this hill politically.
Well, you said it very well, Jim, and you said it with passion, which it really needs.